Okay, good.
Am I coming in here or are you coming in here?
Oh, now you are.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm super glad to be here and really excited for you on your journey of parenthood. Here to talk all about feeding your baby. You can see all these images of different babies for Spoonful One of those of all of our children eating and enjoying food. So the goals today, just as a reminder, is just a total overview of kind of how to feed your baby in 2021. We'll go over just regular standard information, talk a little bit about new data, specifically around the different kinds of foods we want you to eat early in life, talk about how you can prevent food allergies and feed your baby the smartest diet possible. And I'm going to just kind of start from the beginning. I'm Dr. Wendy Sue Swanson. I'm a mom to two. My babies are now not babies, but I call them my babies, 14 and 12. And I practiced general pediatrics for 12 years. I'm now the chief medical officer for Spoonful One. We are trying to revolutionize how families feed their babies and how we set kids up for a healthy lifetime. And ultimately, the reason that I've left academic medicine and that I'm working as this chief medical officer in our company is that without question, we know things today that we didn't know 5 or 10 years ago about feeding babies. And I just don't want this next generation of kids to wait any longer. So that's kind of my mission in that way. You can look up any information about what we're going to talk about on spoonful1.com. So it's spoonful1.com. I'll also have my colleague Stacy is going to be in the chat and can answer specific questions for you guys as I go along. We can send you links to the research and send you even more information that way. So just to get started, the thing is once a baby is born, in infancy, they traverse across this whole pathway where they start on a liquid diet. And by the time your baby is a year and turns into a toddler, by definition, it'll be more of a solid diet. And frankly, how you get there isn't a perfect script of how you do it, but there is increasing research that shows us that we can feed our babies in really smart ways that include, for example, common allergens really early. But from the beginning, it's breast milk or formula. And I just want to say, as a mom who both breastfed and needed some formula, either are great. We know that there are immune properties that are passed through breast milk. We also know that all of the proteins and all the nutrients, including things like iron, et cetera, vitamins and minerals, are in formula as well. So whatever you've decided and whatever you're able to do, they're both really great. And then as you're kind of getting into feeding your baby in the beginning, so if you've already had your baby or you're just soon expecting, we do recommend supplemental vitamin D. And a lot of that is about bone health, but also immune health. Vitamin D helps kind of make really strong bones. And we know, for example, particularly women who live in northern climates, even like the United States, away from the equator, we tend to have less vitamin D available in our breast milk. So breastfeeding babies, but even formula-fed babies, should have an additional 400 international units of supplemental vitamin D. And it's a vitamin. So you can get it in little drops, put it on your breast. If you're breastfeeding, you can put the dropper right directly into baby's mouth. And it's one of those things like, I want you to give it to your baby every day. We know that vitamin D is a regulator, even protects against things like insulin-dependent diabetes and things later in life, which these are things you can't see and you never want in your life. But we do know that it's recommended. So you do it if you forget on a Tuesday or you forget Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you just pick back up again where you started and kind of do the best you can. We recommend vitamin D all throughout that first year of feeding. And so here you are, you're trucking along, you're doing breastfeeding, you're doing formula feeding, hopefully other people in your family, if you are doing express breast milk in a bottle or formula, someone else is feeding the baby. And then you get to this time where ultimately baby starts to show you signs of readiness for solid food, which is awesome, because feeding our babies does provide this kind of amazing spiritual experience. And I think even with 14 and 12-year-olds, I still have that today. I think feeding our babies is as good as kind of like watching our babies peacefully sleep. Like there's just a couple of things as parents that are magic and make us feel really, really good. And as babies start to show you readiness, there's probably not a perfect day to start solid food or complementary food introduction. It's kind of a combination of where you and your partner are and where your baby is. Signs of readiness that we want your baby to show you. So first and foremost, they need to have kind of emotional, psychological interest in food. So you're hanging out having pizza dinner and your baby's like, that smells so good. Like, what is that? Or they watch you, like you pick up a spoon, you're like, having cereal and they're following the spoon all the way to the cereal. So they're showing you, I smell that food. I look at that food. I'm watching my mom and dad or mom and mom or dad and dad eat. And I want some of that too. So that's really important. Secondarily, they need some gross and fine motor skills that really make it safe for babies to start solid food. So, around 4 months of age, babies should have pretty good truncal stability. So if they're sitting on your lap or they're sitting in a little bumbo chair, they can kind of sit on their own. They also should have some decent head control, because as babies start to eat solid foods, they negotiate the food from the front of their mouth, they get it and move it to the back of their mouth, and then an involuntary swallow reflex starts. And so you want to make sure that your baby has really good, strong head control so that there's no problems with choking or any risk to their airway when they're eating. So baby keeps their head up pretty well. Baby keeps their tummy up pretty well. Baby is showing interest with their mind or their face or their hand towards that food. That's when you're start and ready to go for complementary foods. Now, so what's the very best first food? It's whatever you want it to be. There is not a single first food that is perfect or superior to any other one. So you, in the beginning of this feeding journey with your child, you get to decide whatever it is. You need to make sure it's of the right consistency and texture. If you're doing baby-led weaning or not, you get to decide what that first food is. And then this is where everything has changed and is completely different than what we used to say. We used to talk to parents about going really slow, about holding off on certain foods till age 3, or holding off on egg until age 2, or holding off on dairy products until age 1. We don't recommend that at all anymore. In fact, what we know is that when we did that, food allergies were already starting to double each of those decades, like in a generation. But when we started to basically hold off on those foods, it got worse. And so what we know today, and the USDA recommends, is saying right when your baby is 4 to 6 months of age, you want to make sure that you're not just getting in pureed avocado, or you're not just getting in a little soft banana, but that you're really thinking carefully, that you're going pretty quickly and pretty intentionally through as many foods as possible. And that includes peanut, tree nuts, soy, egg, wheat, all those different fish, fin fish, so any kind of fish that swims in the sea, any shellfish that swims that your family enjoys. We want all those different foods in your baby's diet right from the get-go. We know that about 6 million children in the United States, 8% of children in the United States have a food allergy. And to put that in context, that's 2 kids in every kindergarten classroom in the United States shows up to kindergarten, unfortunately, with a food allergy. And we don't want that to happen anymore. We know that the immune system learns about food early in life, and we know that 70% of the immune system is in your stomach, in your GI tract, basically from your mouth, throat, down into your intestines, through that tummy. And that food is ultimately presented and introduced to your baby best in the stomach. So what we want to make sure of as you're kind of raising your baby is not going slow, not waiting until 9 months or 10 months or 11 months. If you can do it right at 4 or 5, 6 months of age, when your baby shows those signs of readiness and you start those complementary foods, you are getting a diverse diet as quickly as you can. We know in some ways that there are more allergies here in the United States, but actually all over the world, because there's likely a modern susceptibility, meaning that just the way we live in the modern world has made us more susceptible to developing allergies or over-responding to things. An allergy is just your body's immune system kind of overreacting to a substance that otherwise wouldn't cause or trigger any harm. Modern susceptibility, we think, comes from a combination of things. Number one, a lack of diet diversity, that increasingly the modern world, we just don't eat, it's like kids' menus are chicken nuggets and French fries and mac and cheese, right? We're not increasingly eating all kinds of colorful fruits and vegetables, all different kinds of proteins, et cetera. We also know the overuse of antibiotics has decreased the amount of microbiome or good bacteria that we've got in our bodies. We know that dirt is good for babies. So you've heard probably that hygiene hypothesis, the idea that if you raise your baby in a bubble, it's not as good. Meaning if you overuse Purell, you overstay home in some ways, it's not as good for baby. Throw your baby out in the garden, let them play in that dirt. We know it's good. Drool. We talk about that in the context of dogs, for example. You raise your child in the house with a dog, they're much less likely to develop allergic disease later. Again, more different bacteria and fungus and all the stuff from the yard kind of comes into house, and babies growing up in that environment. Without those kinds of things, we know we have this kind of ratcheting up or increased risk for developing allergies. So the number one lever that we've got as parents when we're starting to feed our babies now is that we can create diet diversity. We know the longer you wait, the the more likely that your child is at risk for developing a food allergy. So for example, a study out of Canada found if you waited until your baby was 1 year of age or 12 months, your baby was 4 times as likely to develop a peanut allergy. If a mom or dad waited until 18 months, they were 7 times as likely to develop a peanut allergy. So what we know is that you not only want to get them in early, you want to keep them in the diet while a baby's growing up so that that immune system that's in the tummy is like every single day eating and learning, oh, okay, there's banana, there's peanut, there's pistachio, there's hazelnut, there's soy, there's milk, there's egg. And as the immune system just sees it every day, baby's immune system is growing up learning that these are just foods and nothing to overreact to. Part of the reason that we believe there's been an increase in food allergies in the way that it's been happening, that doubling each decade, is we know kind of the barrier to people's skin has potentially been changed. So part of that modern environment might be our use of high efficiency detergents. They're kind of harsh on our skin. When they sit in our clothes, they break down our skin a little bit. But we also know the number one risk factor for developing a food allergy in children is eczema, which is a pretty common rash in infancy. About 1 in 5 babies will have eczema or what's called atopic dermatitis. It's often in like the little folds of their elbows here and the folds behind their knees, sometimes even under here where the drool kind of gets the skin dried out and then it kind of creates a rash that way. That creates an opening in the skin. And so if there's peanut dust lying around or cashew dust or little egg here and mom's got it on her hands, picks up baby's introduced to those foods through their skin. And we know that tends to be kind of an allergic-like process. So what we've learned from studies like the LEAP trial conducted in 2015 or published in 2015 in the New England Journal of Medicine, we found if you take kids with eczema and you feed them peanut at least like 3 or 4 times a week, and you feed them all the way through infancy and all the way through toddlerhood and into kindergarten, that those children, if they're constantly eating peanut, they're about 80% less likely to ever develop a peanut allergy in the first place. And that's the data that turned everything on its head. Then more data published that even said, okay, well, let's take a bunch of even 3-month-old babies who are breastfeeding. We can introduce 6 different common allergens early in life in that infancy, try to keep them in multiple times a week. And it works. When you do that, there was a 2/3 reduction in food allergies. But what we found is that not even half of the moms, even in a research trial, could get 5 or 6 foods in their baby's diet every week. So, that's why I'm here even talking about how you feed a baby at large, because I work with Spoonful One as the chief medical officer. Our founder is a mom of 5. Actually, a couple of her kids are behind me in some of these photos. She also is, her name is Dr. Kari Nadeau. She runs the allergy center at Stanford University, and she was taking care of all sorts of kids with food allergy and said, this is just not a peanut problem. This is a food problem in some ways. So she conducted research for a year where she fed some kids 10 foods at once, some kids just 2 foods, some kids just 1 food. And after a year, she then looked at how those babies and children did, and they drew blood samples to say, well, what's their kind of immunity like? What's their allergy profile like? And what she found is that when she fed 10 small amounts of food or even 10 large amounts of food, the same thing happened. Those kids had a much less allergy prone kind of function in their blood. It just showed that they tolerated those foods better and they were less allergic in nature. And that was the beginning of Spoonful One, where she said, we have to make this easy for families. If you go to Target or you go to Walmart or you go on Amazon or you go to your local grocery store, doesn't matter where you're going. If you're going to reach and buy commercially available baby food, the baby foods don't have nuts and tree nuts and fish and shellfish in them. We're setting families up for failure in some ways. So she created Spoonful One to kind of solve that problem. So Spoonful One is a mix of 16 different foods. So this is just the box. I wonder if that's right side for you or reverse for you. For me on my screen, it's a little bit reversed, but it's 16 different foods. So all the tree nuts, peanut, soy, egg, milk, wheat, fish, 2 kinds of fish, shellfish, the kind of things that we often don't put in baby foods, but they're the foods that she knew we wanted to get in babies' bellies right away. And it's designed to just be fed on a daily basis, super easy. So each little pack, I thought I had some, I do have some stick packs. Let me just show you what they look like. They're really small. So you get to decide whatever food you want to start with. Then you're just going to take a little pouch of Spoonful One. You're going to open it. You'll see 16 different foods measured out in small amounts based on the research done at Stanford. And you'll see it's just that amount. So just a tiny bit of powder, kind of tastes nutty. I always say that it tastes a little bit like the non-marshmallow part of Lucky Charms, the like yummy kind of delicious other part of that cereal. You mix it into mashed up apple, mix it in, bake it into anything that you want. But on a daily basis, then your baby's having a really good food day. They're breastfeeding, they're formula feeding, doesn't matter. But each day they're getting exposed to all those common foods that account for 90% of food allergies here in the United States. So comprehensive approach to say, we want these foods in your baby's tummy every single day. We want them to grow up with their immune system recognizing understanding and knowing them. And we want it to not take over your life. You don't need to be blending crazy different shakes every day. We want you to just kind of dump it into the foods and diets that your family loves to eat. We want you to share all your table foods with babies when they're appropriate textures as early as you can. And ideally, Spoonful One just kind of grows up with your baby. After your baby's 6 months of age, there are products for these little puffs. So once baby's got like a little pincer grasp, or, you know, even if you're just kind of helping it, these are kind of safe for babies down to 6 months of age. This packet and this packet have the exact same amount of all those 16 foods measured out, so that you're getting what's 30 milligrams. It doesn't mean a lot to most of us, but an exact amount of each one of these different 16 foods. And then you can keep them up where baby can just choose to eat this one time a day. And then as babies get older, because we want this, you know, we want you to stick with it. These are little crackers that baby can eat after years. So this same packet, this has the exact same amount of those 16 different foods. And that goal is just routine, every single day diet diversity. You know, we know being a mom and being a dad is draining and really exciting. We know feeding is a delicious part of that experience. We wanted to just kind of create a mom hack that says, okay, we can be really science-minded. We can help families not be scared of these different common allergens in early life, and we can get them into these babies and toddlers diet every single day. And I mean, I think that's the goal on your behalf. You know, some people talk now about 100 new foods in 100 days. And I love it, because it's basically like you start, you get out of the gates, you do not go slow. You can introduce a new food on Monday, a different food on Tuesday, a different food on Wednesday. And you just say, yes, I'm going to get all these different foods and I'm going to keep them in my baby's diet so that the immune system can keep learning each and every day as they're growing up. And talk to your pediatrician as you're making these decisions. If your baby has severe eczema, talk with your pediatrician about introducing some of these foods, since those are kids who are more likely to develop food allergy. We want all these foods in those babies' tummies as early as we can get them, because we want that tummy to just kind of grow what we call tolerance to those different foods and food proteins that way. So, you know, that's really the main goal and kind of why we're here. But the bottom line is you get to decide what the first food is. Once your baby shows signs of readiness, you're doing breastfeeding, you're doing formula feeding, you're using vitamin D, you choose your first food and then you get out of the gates quickly. You diversify their diet. You keep all these different common allergens that are in your kitchen into your baby's diet right away, and you don't wait. The longer you wait, the more the risk in developing a food allergy, because baby's tummy is not getting exposed to those food. And particularly if baby's got skin rashes, they're getting exposed to those little food particles through their skin. So that's the big goal. And that's really kind of where we are kind of talking about new feeding guidelines. So I'm going to go and look at some of your comments, and I'm just trying to remember if I go to the event tab, I think that's where I go. Let me just see, chat. Stacy, if you're listening, tell me where you want me to go if I can see any of these. I see the chat here. I'm probably in the wrong spot. So maybe I'll just stay. Okay, hold on. Okay, you guys. There we go. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so here you are. So I'm just going to see, Stacey, feel free to send any directly to me and I can answer. We have 5, 7, 10 minutes, something like that. The goal again. So, and Spoonful was designed, let me just talk a little bit about when's the best time. I want you guys to start right out of the gate, eating all these different foods, giving them to your baby, enjoying them so your baby can enjoy them forever. If your baby's already 8 months, of course it's not too late. Early is the best. Whenever you start is better, and it's always going to be better than never, right? The longer you wait to introduce these, the less chance you've got in some ways to protect an infant from developing a sensitivity. 8% of babies, that means, 300,000 babies or more that are born just this year in the United States will go on to develop a food allergy, since 4 million babies are born every year. So, you getting in it, but it's never too late, without question. So any age you can start doing this. A diverse diet is good for all of us. What's incredible about bringing these table foods to your baby between 4 and 7 months as well is that the flavor palette, like how babies are creating taste preferences, is probably, we believe, most open between about 4 to 7 months of age. So while you're doing even something like Spoonful One to be comprehensive about it, you also really want to bring these foods so your baby can taste some of those flavors, those bitter, those naturally salty type things, those naturally sweet things. We don't ever want you to add salt to baby's diet. We don't ever want you to add sugar to baby's diet, and you don't need to add spices to baby's diet. Babies have 3 times the amount of taste buds that you and I do, because as we grow old, we kind of lose them, which is why as we get older, we love spicy different foods, and we can tolerate more cayenne pepper than before because we just don't have as many taste buds. So you don't need to over doctor your food. In fact, your baby's first bite of mango might be like taste explosion, right? Or your baby's first taste of soy might, like either like a little soft tofu or, a little smushed up or softened edamame or something. Your baby might just be like, this is amazing, right? And babies, will spit stuff out when they're eating it at first too. And so, certainly, you're going to watch your baby for that. That's another sign of readiness. I didn't tell you about that. Some babies will do what's called a tongue thrust. And sometimes when they're just exploring the flavors, they'll do that too. So usually just wait, a little bit, try it again, see how they do, and then try again the next day. So one question is really, parent has a food allergy, will baby? Well, my goodness, I hope not. And with what you know today is you're going to be active. If a parent, so mom or dad, has a food allergy, the increased risk of a baby having food allergy is up. It's not 1-to-1. It's about 1.6-to-1, for example. So, the biggest risk is eczema. Second to that can be this mix of genetics, especially like a sibling, right? Because babies' siblings are most like them. They're more like their siblings than they are their parents, right? Because that's a mix of the two parents, So absolutely no stand that child is going to have a food allergy, but mom or dad being really careful early in life, protecting that skin and getting all these different foods in early in life. That's the best protection strategy you've got for a baby who's got a family history of food allergies. What if one of the parents has a known allergy like shellfish? So same thing. I mean, that's exactly the kind of work, that potentially it could happen to your child, you getting all different kinds of food and that food diversity in every day. There's a study from 2020 from Dr. Karina Venter that looked at babies as young as even 6 months, if they had a diverse diet, and she calculated that by, how many different common allergens they have. Each additional food that your kid eats every day, meaning like some kids only eat like 2 different foods a day. The kids that were eating 12, 15 different foods a day that included these common allergens, it was 90% effective by having a really diverse diet early in life against the development of food allergies later and up to age 10. So the more diversity you get every day, the better. So even if mom's got a peanut allergy or dad's, got a shellfish allergy, which is the most common allergy in adulthood, actually, you want to get all of them in. Don't just focus on that one food. The immune system is, really protein specific. It learns, like you protect against the development of a peanut allergy by eating peanut proteins and getting that into your tummy. The immune system knows the peanut protein specifically. You protect against an egg allergy by eating egg protein, baked egg powder like we've got in Spoonful One, or even as your baby gets older, scrambled eggs. And that, teaches it. You can't protect against an allergy to cod by eating egg. You have to eat cod because the protein, if you think about kind of antibodies and little what we call antigens, it's a lock and key type situation. So don't just think about a single allergen in a family. Think about kind of a tendency towards that. So again, why are eczema babies at increased risk? Well, the reason that they're at increased risk is we believe that kids who have eczema, that dry skin rash, that means their skin's a little open to the world. So the wind blows, whatever pollen is in the wind can go into the skin in that way. You've got a little bit of food particle on your hands, which we probably always do after eating. You pick up baby, whatever's on your hand is going to transfer into that skin. So what we know about some of the early studies that used and evaluated children with eczema and the avoidance and prevention of peanut allergy is that when kids who had all that eczema were feeding on peanut through their tummy, they were able to kind of overcome the development of allergies that was coming from getting exposed to peanut through the skin. And peanut is a really stable compound. It's a fat connected to a protein that just stays in the environment. So even if you don't have peanuts in your house, your baby will definitely be exposed to peanut particles in the world. And so if they've got open skin, you don't want the first place for a baby to learn about food be their skin. You want the first place that babies learn about food to be in their stomach. And so that's really why, babies, we believe it, and that have eczema, they're basically just getting exposed to different food particles through the skin, which tends to create the allergic process, as opposed to babies, even if they've got eczema, if you feed, they kind of can overcome that in a way. So, I think that's what it's something called the dual allergen exposure hypothesis, which is that, if you can feed through the tummy, you'll overcome the experience of learning about foods through the skin that way. All right, you guys, thanks for having me. Have an awesome time at the Prego Expo. Check out more information at spoonfulone.com. We're also on Instagram. I'm Dr. Wendy Sue Swanson. I'm on Instagram as well. You can come ask questions there. Stacy will be here. We've got the booth and we can answer questions for you. But you can buy Spoonful One all over the place. You know, spoonfulone.com, on Amazon and Walmart.com. And we'll be launching in a big retail store all over the United States this summer. So stay tuned for that too. Congratulations on your babies. Have a great time. And thanks so much for having me.